Welcome back. Coming up in Kamloops, June 21st at Centennial Park in Westside, Ride Don't Hide. This is a great event, and we have sitting next to me here the founder of this event, Michael Schratter, in from Vancouver. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
Yes. So how long ago was this whole ride founded?
I left to cycle around the world in August of 2010, and I returned 16 months later in November 2011. And that was the goal of cycling 40,000 kilometers, the equatorial distance around the planet. It took me through a lovely 33 countries on 6 continents. And since my return, the Canadian Mental Health Association has built Ride Don't Hide into their flagship national anti-stigma campaign. You
went around the world to get this message out that the stigma needs to be dropped around mental illness. How do you feel that that has changed things? Do you feel like you've made that difference?
Well, I can't speak as to whether I've made a difference or not. I'd like to think Ride Don't Hide has made somewhat of a change. There will be 28 rides across Canada this upcoming Father's Day, with roughly 5,000, 6,000 people participating. But I think any sort of social movement doesn't travel in a linear line. I think there's a real snowballing going on here. The Let's Talk campaign with Bell, Rick Rippon, the Canucks' untimely death, and the Mind Check campaign the Canucks have done. So all these things sort of add up together, and suddenly a stigma or a misunderstanding begins to dissolve.
But how unfortunate to have a stigma around something that affects so many people. 1 in 5 Canadians suffer from some sort of mental illness. That's 7 million Canadians. Mm-hmm. Many of those never seek help.
Yeah, exactly. People don't seek help for numerous reasons. One, we don't educate ourselves on these things. We up until very recently, just don't talk about it. It's the sort of family secret that you just sweep in the closet. I'm a teacher, and teachers aren't educated at UBC and SFU to deal with these things necessarily as a teacher. And so the conversation doesn't happen. Again, that's changing. And yeah, when you look at the 7 million Canadians that deal with some sort of mental health challenge in a given year, and you begin to ask yourself, well, who's telling the story? It's sadly such a negative portrayal through the Hollywoodization of mental illness, through media. I mean, the only time, up again until recently, a person with a mental health challenge made the news was when something horrific happened. And so that negative storytelling, understandably, shuts down the conversation, and high-functioning people that might deal with a bit of anxiety or depression or bipolar disorder understandably don't want to be associated with the negative storytelling. And as long as these 7 million Canadians that stay silent, stay in hiding, the stigma will be perpetuated. So the audacity, the courage that had me come out and disclose and to start Ride Don't Hide was this notion that as a part-time journalist and as a teacher, I have an obligation to try to tell a different story, to try to put some balance into the whole perspective.
And you've certainly done that, and as a result, now this annual ride takes place, and it will be here in Kamloops, and I'm sure that you want to encourage people to come out and take part in this and to not be afraid.
Yeah, exactly. It's a very family-oriented event. We're looking at about 200 people here in Kamloops. There's, I think, about 14 in British Columbia, another 10 or so in Ontario. I believe in Alberta, of course, and now in Saskatchewan. And yeah, it's all for a great cause. It's all for the nonprofit of Canadian Mental Health Association to help women and their families in regards to their support programs.
I took the stat off the website. The CMHA, the Canadian Mental Health Association, serves more than 80,000 people in our province in 100 different communities. And those are just the ones that choose to come forward. What are the numbers of those that aren't?
Well, I'm not sure. I can't speak to how many people seek help or don't seek help. These days, things are moving very quickly in a positive direction. And so more and more people are going to their family doctor and saying, hey, I'm dealing with something here that I don't know what to do with. And maybe it's an acute emotional response or anxiety. That said, we're still living in a time and place, especially perhaps for men, where it's more acceptable to be, I don't know, a substance abuser, to be an alcoholic, let's say, to be a high-level executive and have a 2-martini lunch than for that executive to go into his doctor and say, I'm dealing with a mental health challenge. So we have a long way to go. Unfortunately, suicide is still the second largest killer of Canadian youth after car accidents. And that's abomination, if that's the right word I'm looking for. And so we've got some work to go, but things are moving quickly in the right direction.
I take my hat off to you, Michael, for what you've done to help push this initiative into the light in a more positive way. And I think it's great because now this ride exists in many communities across the country, and I think it needs to continue to build. So hats off to you for what you've done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me here.
It's great to have you here. We are out of time, but you can go to the website ridedon'thide.com and you can sign up for this great event. It's taking place on Father's Day, June 21st at Centennial Park in Westside. Stay with us.